excited about this video. I read a lot. If you watch my vlogs, I read on the train, I read before bed, I read by the fire, I read in the garden to relax. I just really love reading. I have a few different genres that I really enjoy. So the genres that we're going to talk about in this order for today, and I'm going to put chapters. So if you don't like a certain genre, just skip to the chapters of the genres that you do like. But these are the genres that we're going to talk about today in this order. The first one is cute romance novels. This is the biggest genre of the books that I've read. I want to share what I loved, a few ones that I didn't like so much. I feel like that's a good place to start. Dramatic romance novels, so with a little bit more drama, sadness, that kind of stuff. And then just regular drama novels. Sometimes it's just more about drama. I guess normal, just regular novels go into this genre as well. The next few genres that we're going to talk about is business books, self-help and spirituality, and then celebrity books and memoirs, and then writers' memoirs. The final genre we're going to talk about at the end is Christmas novels, because it's Christmas time and I have been reading a few wintertime novels, so I will share those at the end. So let's get into it. Okay, so some books I will have the physical copy. I will grab it just to kind of remind me of what the book is about. Some books I've already given away. Some books I've listened to on Audible. So I will just kind of check the cover to remind me of what the book was about anyway. So the first book I want to talk about is Happy Place by Emily Henry. I mean, I haven't read an Emily Henry book so far that I didn't like. This one is amazing. It's about a group of friends that's been friends for a very long time. Some of them are dating, some of them used to date. They go back in time to their college times where they actually became friends and met, and it's just really those New England vibes. And they summer together in this beautiful historic house that one of the people, their family owns, but they're going to sell, and they all have their own thing going on which they're not sharing with their group. And the main character is meeting her ex there, and it's really awkward because they didn't tell anybody they broke up, and then they're pretending they're still together when they're not, and they're also working through their issues. It's just a really great Emily Henry book. If you like Emily Henry or cute romance novels, definitely this is one to read. This is also an Emily Henry book. I've only read 2 Emily Henry books this year, but I liked both of them. This one is also about 2 old friends, a guy and a girl, and they've been friends for 10 years or something, and their lives somehow never really sync up, but they take one trip together every summer, and something has happened between them to cause them to fall out, but then they end up taking a trip together again, and of course they are also exploring maybe having feelings for each other and stuff. It's just like a really cute summery romance novel in different places where they travel to, because you see like every year and then the current year they kind of intertwine, and it's just a really cute novel, perfect for summer. I feel like Emily Henry books are perfect to read in the summer. They're just perfect summer beach reads. Definitely recommend. The next book I don't have a physical copy of anymore because I didn't really love it that much. The book is The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han, and I mean, I love her Lara Jean series that you can see here. Completely recommend. I also read those this year, but The Summer I Turned Pretty, I saw that there was a Prime video series about it, so I was interested in reading it. I saw that other people liked it, but I think all the characters were good, but it was just really aimed towards teenagers to read, and I can read books that are for teenagers or young adults, or they can be really good. Like the Lara Jean series is also about teenagers, but that is like a great series. It's just like about baking and about cute stuff, and it's just really descriptive, and you really feel like you're there, and it's really cozy. Whereas The Summer I Turned Pretty, I feel like the characters I totally understood, and when I watched the episodes of the Summer I Turned Pretty series, it was exactly how I pictured it, everything. But it just was too immature for me. I'm an adult and I really felt like if I were a teenager, I would have enjoyed it a lot more than now as an adult. So The Summer I Turned Pretty, it's fine, but as an adult, it might not be for you, but I've seen other adults like it, so I don't know, it just wasn't for me. Whereas These 3 books are the Lara Jean series by Jenny Han, To All the Boys I've Loved Before is a movie, and then the second one, P.S. I Still Love You, and then the third one, Always and Forever, Lara Jean. Lara Jean, she wrote a bunch of letters to all the boys she ever loved, and then somehow after a few years they all get sent out, and all the guys that she loved get notified that she had feelings for them and she never told them. So that makes for a really funny outcome, of course, and then she pairs up with one of those guys and they have feelings for each other, and she also finds that she rediscovers a lot of how she remembers it. A lot of other people remember it differently, so it's also just about somehow we tell ourselves stories that aren't necessarily true. Those books are just so cute, and if you like the first one, you're going to like the second one and the third one. The only thing is I would not recommend reading them all in a row because they all play out over the span of one school year, I think. In the final book, it just feels so much like, oh, you're near the end, because it feels like you're reading one long book. So definitely leave plenty of time between the books, maybe even read other books in between, because I was kind of like rushing to finish the final book, even though it's just as good as the first two ones, and it's always so fun to read something and then get to see the movies about it. So yeah, it was really enjoyable. I love those. They're cute, there's romance, it's just adorable, and the vibes are great, so definitely recommend. The next book is Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. I picked this book up, I think it had good reviews. I think it's part 2 of When in Rome. I didn't read the first one, When in Rome. This one, it just wasn't for me. It was too like immature and cutesy, and it wasn't very like interesting and complex. It was just too like, it just wasn't very interesting. It was very, to me it felt very one-dimensional. It didn't really feel the motives of people, and everyone just seemed too like naive and kind of flat. So yeah, I didn't really like this. It's about a small town girl and then this bodyguard that has to work in town for someone for a while, and then they are really attracted to each other, but it just wasn't interesting for me. To be honest, I didn't even finish it. I read, I can still see. I read this much, so like halfway, 1/3 halfway, but it just wasn't interesting to me. I'm going to get rid of it soon, so I don't recommend this one. I like it when it's cute in the sense that it's cozy, but I don't like when it's too cutesy and it's just not very interesting characters or not very interesting dynamic between two people. It didn't work for me. Then another book that I already got rid of, so I can't show you, but it's called The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I did finish that book and it was okay. It's about this data scientist, which spoke to me because I used to do data science as a sociologist as well, and that's why it spoke to me. And she gets connected to this really successful business figure who has an equation of meeting your soulmates, and then she gets matched to him, and they don't want that, but they like each other, and you know, their relationship develops, and it was fine. But I feel like it could have been a little bit more smart, a little bit more like complex and interesting. I feel like the business was kind of like when you watch those 90s romance novels and someone just has this really futuristic business, but it's just white walls and nothing really happens there or something, you know? Like that's what the business felt like from this person. And then the main character, the woman, I don't know, I didn't really get, it just wasn't really amazing. It didn't sweep me up, like I had to kind of push through, but it was an easy read, which I like, but no, it just wasn't for me. And then these are my final 2 romance novels, my final 2 cute romance novels. They're both by Abby Jimenez. The first one is Part of Your World, the second one is called Yours Truly. I loved both of these books so much. The writing is so good, you can just really sense everything, you can feel everything. Part of Your World is about this rich woman. She ends up in this small town, and she meets this guy who is really like a small town guy, has not a lot of money but is very dedicated to his work and what he does in the town. And then she has a legacy, like a medical legacy in the hospital, but her abusive ex-husband also works there, so she is going through a divorce, or they never got married and they're just separated or something, and she feels like she is stuck in this legacy world, but then he is in this small town world and they really like each other, but they just wouldn't fit into each other's world. So they're just, the romance is just amazing, they really love each other, and it's just so cute. And yeah, it really, I loved it. And then they have to figure out if they can be together or not, but they just have a great pull towards each other, which I loved. And then the second one is the best friend of the person in the first book is now the main character, and she is divorced, I think, or also going through a breakup, and she ends up living in her mother's house even though her mother is gone, and she works in the hospital. And then a new doctor comes in and he doesn't really have a great first start, and everyone thinks he's an asshole, but it turns out he has a lot of anxiety. And I felt so seen by the description of this person with anxiety, because I have experienced a lot of anxiety in my life, and the main character just knows how to be there for him. Like, it's not so much trouble for her to accommodate him and his anxiety. And I just thought that was so endearing, because if you have anxiety, a lot of people think that you're really difficult, and you know, you feel like you have to kind of hide and not tell people what you really experience, because people just think it's too much. So I just thought that was so cute, that she didn't care, it was fine for her, and they're just really attracted, and they're fake dating for some reason. This is just a really, really good book. I love both of her books. I will have to see if she wrote any more that I can read next year. Okay, so that was the cute romance novels, and now we're going to continue into the dramatic romance novels. So let's start with Colleen Hoover. I've read 4 of her books this year, and I loved one. I thought one was really good, but it wasn't really for me. 2 I really didn't like. So let's start with the one that I loved. The book that I loved by Colleen Hoover was It Starts With Us. So this is the second part of It Ends With Us. I read It Ends With Us last year, and it was the first Colleen Hoover book I've ever read, and I thought it was so good. It's about abusive, controlling relationship, and I think many women can recognize themselves in there. It's just written really well. It's dramatic, but it's also romantic, and it's also cute. She meets this really successful doctor, and she opens up her own flower shop, and then the doctor's sister works in her flower shop, and they become best friends. But then she also still has connection to her childhood best friends and romantic interest, and he ends up also moving to Boston, and they all end up in Boston, but her current boyfriend doesn't like that she is still connected to him, but she always wondered about what happened to him, because he had a really difficult childhood and had to go away for that reason. She wrote him letters, so through those old letters you kind of go back to what happened between them, the old friend and her. And then her current relationship has really great highs but also really low lows, and it's just a really great love story, but also realistic, and just really about how difficult it is to navigate when love isn't enough, basically. So yeah, it was a great book. And then this book is about what happens after that, so I won't spoil too much, because just go read the first one, It Ends With Us. It's so good. And then pick up It Starts With Us. I did notice that a lot of people didn't like this one but loved the first one. I loved both. I thought the writing was good, I thought it was interesting, and for me it really rounded out the story. So yeah, definitely recommend. The next 3 Colleen Hoover books I don't have anymore, so that tells you something. But I will first talk about the one that I did like but I gave away, because these 3 books are just so depressing and so sad, and that's just not for me. Like, when I read romance novels or fictional novels, it should be at least a little bit inspiring and uplifting. A little bit. It doesn't have to be immature or naive or flat or simple, but just it needs to inspire me in some way. And I've just felt like these 3 novels by Colleen Hoover are so depressing. Honestly, I don't know what to do with myself. The first book is Reminders of Him. This is a great book. It's a great novel. It's very dramatic, very sad. It's about this young woman who has just been released from prison, and she was responsible for her boyfriend's death. They had a car accident, which was her fault, and they had been driving under influence, and she ended up abandoning the wrecked car, but he was still alive. So if she had called for an ambulance or something, he might have survived, but now he didn't survive. And after he passed, she had to go to prison, but she ended up being pregnant with his child, the guy who died. And now, many years later, the child has grown up with the grandparents, the parents from that guy, and she ends up coming back to town after she's released, and she wants to try to reconnect with her daughter because she didn't know she was pregnant at the time she went to prison. She only found out later. It's really complicated because literally everyone in the town hates her, and she's not allowed contact with her kid at this time. But then she ends up befriending the old best friend from her passed away boyfriend, and through him he is constantly conflicted because he sees her side, but he has been he knows what happened. So it's just a really complex story. There is romance, but it's mostly about the complexity of an accident like this and the aftermath and everything that has happened since then. Yeah, it's just very sad. It's very dramatic, but it was a great novel. If you're into things that are really sad and dramatic, I would 100% recommend. I think I gave it 5 stars. Yeah, it was great, but just a little bit too sad and depressing for me. So the next novel is called Regretting You, also by Colleen Hoover. This one was just so sad and so depressing. It's about this young couple that ends up pregnant when they're 16 or 17 or something, and then the girl, her sister, is dating his best friend, so they're kind of like a little friend group, but they end up pregnant really young. And then many years later, the daughter is 16, and then the mother wants the daughter not to make the same mistakes, and then a really tragic accident happens and a lot of secrets are coming out, and the whole book is just so depressing because everyone is dealing with this death, but the whole family is like broken up, and everybody is just so depressed and so sad. And then the daughter starts acting out somewhat, and the mother just is really angry with her the whole time. And I just feel like it was just so sad. Like they didn't get each other at all, and just everybody just, yeah, it was so sad. I didn't like this book. I think I gave it like 2 stars, or maybe not even a review, because I feel bad for leaving bad reviews. But this book is just so depressing. I mean, I see that people gave it a 4.15, which is pretty good, I guess, but this book was just so depressing. I would not recommend it at all. And then the next book it's exactly the same, not the same story, but it was just so sad and so depressing and not inspiring like at all. It's called All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover, and it's about 2 people are in a relationship, but then their partners end up cheating with each other, and they find out on the same day, and then sometime later they end up dating. It's just because you skip forward immediately to the time where they've been trying to get pregnant for so long that their whole relationship is crumbling. They don't like each other anymore. Someone cheats. It's just so sad because you kind of skipped the cute part where you grow together and find each other, because you only get that at the end, because it's like skipping back in time and then towards the current timeline. And it's just so sad because at the very end there's like sort of a silver lining, cute ending, but it just takes so long and they're just sad the whole time. And I didn't like this book at all. This one and the previous one I would personally not recommend at all, because because I think a book needs to be somewhat inspiring or fun, or yeah, it needs to be a little bit uplifting. Like, this is just too depressing for me personally. So I love the series Virgin River. I watched it on Netflix. I love it. I've been watching for like 5 seasons or something. I think it's a great series. I love the main actress. I love her part. I love the whole town. So Virgin River, the series is based on a series of books, and I swear there are so many Virgin River books. Look. It's so many. So this is the first one, and Ariana and I were in the supermarket and he saw this in sort of like the clearance aisle, and I was like, oh, it's Virgin River. So he was like, you should read it. So it's by Robin Carr. It's just it's cute. It's the same story, of course, as Virgin River. It's the same characters. I liked reading it, but I would not recommend it because this is a really old book series, and I swear I can't read books that are written before the Me Too movement, because it's just the way that women are portrayed. Even when this book is written by a woman for women, I think, so it's not meant to be, but just like, for example, there's this 14-year-old girl, and then apparently she wears makeup and short skirt and she sways her hips when she walks or something, and then every time she's mentioned, she is so sexualized, and it's like, oh, she's really like in Dutch it would translate like she's really putting herself for sale, being provocative, but it's like, this is a 14-year-old girl, first of all. And then also, like, she can wear makeup and short skirts and sway her hips all she wants to. Like, that's just one example, but just a few other examples where I'm just like, oh my god, no, this is just not okay. So it was okay, it was fun, but it's just like, ugh, it just makes me feel so horrible to read about women in this way, and I'm so glad to see how far we've come, that it's just not okay anymore to write about women in this way. Yeah, that's the only reason I wouldn't recommend it. I would, however, recommend the TV series, which is a lot better, and it doesn't have those kind of portrayals in there, and it's really cute, it's really wholesome. Absolutely go and watch it, it's so good. So yeah, book no, series yes. Okay, this book I put it in dramatic romance novels, but I saw in the reviews that it's more like fan fiction because it has a lot of smooshing in there. I don't know if I can say the word sex, but I always see people spelling it. But yeah, there's just a lot of sex in there, which is fine, but it was just like to me, a very immature story. The title of the book is Find Her by Tessa Bailey. So this book was, we had in the Netherlands the English Book Week. So kind of a week to celebrate English books, because a lot of Dutch people are reading English books, including myself. And this book was a free gift, but they gave it to like everyone, even kids. And it's like, it's only about sex. It's like about nothing else. So a lot of people were like, this is so inappropriate. Like, they saw like little kids with this book, which is insane, because it's like, it's literally like, I like romance and I'm okay with some sex scenes in there, but this was just like, it was just too much for me. Like, it was such like a cheap story, like too simple. It's like this rock star and he sees this girl who's of course a virgin, and then they like go for it immediately after the show, and then they end up being separated and he's looking for her or something. Like, I stopped reading this after, like, I read pretty far, like this I read. Oh wait, no, there's like another novel in the back that I also read a few pages of, and I can promise you that I will never ever read a book by Tessa Bailey again. I feel bad saying it because I put stuff out there too. Like, I know that it's so vulnerable to put things out there, but this is just, I cannot. It's just not for me at all. I will definitely get rid of this book. Okay, so the next genre is a little bit more positive. There are 3 books in this genre. I loved 2 of them. I didn't like one of them. So the first one that I absolutely loved is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've never read a Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I didn't love. I loved Daisy Jones and the Six. I loved Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I would totally recommend those. Malibu Rising was okay for me. I liked it, but it wasn't great. But then this one I loved. Carrie Soto is back. It's funny because originally the title didn't speak to me that much. Carrie Soto was a really small character in Malibu Rising, but I didn't love her. I was just like neutral. But then this book is so great. It's about this dad. He's a tennis player. He played professional but got injured and now teaches rich people at the tennis club. And then his daughter, her mom passed away when she was really young. So he is just training his daughter to be the best tennis player in the world. But he always wants to be the best. But she has trouble also with making friends because she only wants to win. And she has trouble keeping relationships because the only relationship she's had in her life is with her dad. And her dad is her coach, her manager, her dad, her best friend. He's everything. So it's just about this whole relationship between those two, but also for her kind of navigating, constantly wanting to be the best, but also seeing things that are more difficult for her and craving certain things like a stable relationship with other people. It's just difficult for her. She retired because of an injury and then never came back, but then a few years later some other younger tennis players coming for her record, and then she wants to make another record and goes back to playing tennis, but she's older and has been out of the game for a long time. And it's just a great book. It's written very well. It's so easy. It's like, you know, every line I want to read the next line, you know, like you're just like in this book. I think I finished this in like 1 week or something, which is really fast for me. Like I never finish a book in one day because I never read so much in one day, but I finished this in a week, which is really fast for me, and it was great. 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, recommend. So the drama novel that I didn't love, that I barely read, is City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. I really like her memoir, Eat, Pray, Love. I've read it like 2 times or something. I know it's basic, but I loved it. And I purchased a couple of her books to read. And City of Girls, I just couldn't get through it. It was just too difficult to read for me. I just found myself getting distracted at every line. It seemed like an interesting story, but it just wasn't gripping enough for me, so I ended up putting it away. I didn't like it. I didn't review it because I barely read it, but yeah, it just wasn't for me. It's like about a young girl. She's going to live with her family and they own a theater and she wants to be in theater or something, and it sounded really interesting, but no. It just was, I feel like I've read a couple of Elizabeth Gilbert's book and I feel bad saying this because I really liked her memoir, but every other book of her, there's going to be one more book later, I just didn't like at all. Okay, now we got that out of the way. This book I loved. It's called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gariel Zavin. This book is just so fun. It's about this group of friends, mainly 2 friends. They're really smart. One of them goes to Harvard, the other one goes to MIT or something. They're both really interested in gaming and they study programming and gaming or something. And they met as kids and they bonded over gaming, and now they meet again, being both a little bit older and students, and they end up reconnecting and creating like a video game together. And it sounds like something I wouldn't be interested in because I'm not really into video games, but it was so interesting. It was such a fun novel. It was so cool. It's like this whole world that I don't know anything about, like programming, gaming. It was so fun. The characters are fun. I also loved that it wasn't for the main woman. It wasn't just about romance. Like she has some relationships in the book and the guy also has some relationships, but it's not only about that. It's about friendship, it's about growing apart, it's about finding each other, it's about creating something just because you have a vision and you think you can make something great even though you have no idea if you can. And it's so great. Like I definitely recommend this book, and I should probably look into what else this writer wrote because I only read this and it was amazing. I've seen rave reviews everywhere. Probably if you're gonna pick up one book, pick up this one. Okay, so the next genre is business books. All the books that I read just because I own my own business, and that I definitely probably wouldn't read if I didn't own my own business. But it's also money mindset, it's just personal growth. So a lot of them are audiobooks, but I have 2 physical books, so I'm going to start with the physical ones. So the first book that I read is Everybody Writes. So I have to preface this by saying that there is a renewed version that I didn't realize. So I bought the wrong one. So this one is just not current anymore. This book, it touches a little bit on social media, but it's just not relevant. And for my business, I do a lot of copywriting. So everything on my website I wrote myself. Every sales page, every launch post, everything, every email I write myself. But I always feel like writing is just something you just have to do it a lot and reflect and practice, and then you get better. But I wanted to get better also by reading about it. And this book says landing page, you know, this kind of stuff, but it just wasn't thorough enough. And it's funny because this book also touches on that, like it should be so practical, and it just wasn't. Probably because it is a little bit outdated. Maybe the newer version is better. I didn't love this. If you know any good or great books about copywriting, about writing hooks, about sales copy, let me know, because I need a better book than this one. So this is my favorite money mindset influencer author. It's Rich AF by Amanda Frances. I love her Instagram, I love her YouTube channel, I listen to her podcast, I have done courses by her, I have this book, I also listen to her book on Audible. I've read the physical copy 3 times. I listened to it on Audible 1 time, I think. I will definitely listen to it again, read it again. If you have like terrible money management skills, or you own your own business but you just don't know how to make money, or you just are interested in making more money and you've never really done anything with money mindset, or you know a lot about money mindset, Amanda Frances is your girl. I love her. This book is great, her podcast is great, her YouTube videos are great, audiobook is great, definitely recommend. I didn't even put this on my list, I think, because if I reread books, I usually don't put them on my Goodreads, but I think I might start doing that because it also says something if you're reading something a lot, right? The next business book is You Are a Bad ASS at Making Money. I don't know if I can say that word or not, by Jen Sincero. And this book I've read it a couple of times. I have listened to the Audible audiobook. I listened to the audiobook twice this year. I read the physical book twice, not this year, but a few years ago. And this is just also a great money mindset book. It's great for entrepreneurship. It's great for manifesting. It's just really good for learning to dream big and start taking action towards your dreams, and just start getting really, really serious about what you want in life and working towards it, and also monetizing your gifts, monetizing what you have to offer. And it's also just a really fun read. Like, Jen Sincero really makes a point of not making it boring or too much. She just makes it fun. The stories are short but interesting and captivating and funny, and they bring the point across. This book is great. Recommend. Pick it up today. Okay, so the next 3 books are audiobooks. So the first one is Business is Personal by Bethany Frankel. So during the pandemic, I started watching her on Real Housewives of New York City, and I thought she was really fun, and everybody's obsessed with her because of her business ethics. And I really saw her grow from like a rags to riches story. I mean, she wasn't like super poor, she lived on the Upper East Side, but I saw her start a business and make it a success. So I was like, I need to know how you did that. So I read her book, Business is Personal. I listened to it on Audible. I mean, it was okay, it was interesting. It has some business stories in there from her, but it's not very specific. It's a lot of trying to make her point like, oh, in this case, I made the right decision. decision. That's just what I'm getting a lot. It's like, oh, and here I also made the right decision. But I feel like a lot of times she doesn't drive home the point enough for me. And I feel like it's inspirational, but it's kind of like you just have to do hard work, but she doesn't tell you what that hard work is. Like, how do you do that work? What do you mean? Like, if you're just playing around on Canva making graphics 8 hours a day, that can be hard work, but also not. And do you mean cold calls? What do you mean? So I feel like it's not very specific, and that also brings me to the other book that I read by her. I listened to it on Audible. It's called A Place of Yes, and she wrote that many years ago about coming from a place of yes in business and in life. And to be honest, I don't know what a place of yes is still. Like, I can make something up in my mind, but she never really explains it, or she doesn't drive home the point, for me at least. Like, of course I get it, like, okay, when there's a no, try to get a yes, or just come from a place of yes, I can have it, and like kind of like positive mindset. But she mentions in the beginning that she does believe in manifesting, but that's not what she means. So I didn't get what this book was about. To be honest, I really didn't get it, and I feel bad. But I heard her mention once that she writes all her books on her phone, and I'm like, maybe you should stop doing that, because it reads like a book that's being written on a phone. Like, of course I write things on my phone sometimes too, but then I go onto my laptop and really have it all laid out as one big thing and really look at the structure of every chapter and everything. Like, I've written a lot of things before, and I'm not saying I'm a better writer than her or anything, like, I don't know, but I just felt like if you're writing your books on your phone, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should just really put in the effort to write a great book, because it really wasn't great. I find it always so disappointing, because then you see all these successful people and then you're like, okay, tell me how you did it, but then they can't really tell you, like, not specific enough for me. I wouldn't recommend either of her books, honestly. The final book I listened to on Audible, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki, and I thought this book was like, if you would just read the chapter about assets versus liabilities, I think you would know enough. I feel like the rest of the book is just kind of, I don't know, it just wasn't really that great. I get why it's a classic, because it has some interesting points, but I think it's also a little bit outdated maybe, or it just needs like a sequel to just kind of bring it up to speed a little bit. And this was like the new version, but I still felt like it wasn't totally up there. I'm at a phase where I'm looking maybe for a lot more specific books about business, and it felt general, but I did really find it interesting, the assets versus liabilities. So he writes from a perspective of growing up as a young child in Hawaii, and he had a friend and his dad was rich, and then his own dad was poor, and he compares like a poor dad's and a rich dad's perspective, and now he has become rich himself, and he just writes a lot about like legal forms of tax evasion, but also about how the rich aren't taxed, but it's the middle class that's taxed. So that was interesting. And also assets versus liabilities, I thought that was really interesting, because a lot of times we think an asset is an asset, but it's actually a liability. And just about that, I thought it was interesting, and I've been reframing how I do business more in thinking about creating assets for myself instead of liabilities. So yeah, it's an interesting book. You could probably read a summary too instead of the whole book, but it was good. The next genre we're going to talk about is self-help and spirituality. Surprisingly to myself, I didn't read that much self-help and spirituality this year, so I was actually surprised myself, to be honest. I was like, oh, normally I read a lot more, but this year I've only read 3 books, but they are good, so I'll let you know what they are. So the first book I picked up by accident because I followed Krista Williams from Almost 30 podcast on Instagram, and she recommended this book, The Shift by Tinks. And I just thought it was about like mindset shifts in general, so I picked it up. But then when I started reading it, I realized it was about dating, but I am not single, I'm not dating. dating. I have a relationship, so I don't need to be dating. But it was still an interesting book. It was a great read. What I loved about it is that it doesn't think about dating as a means to an end. Like you date because you want to find the love of your life. It just talks about dating on its own, what it can bring to you, how you can enjoy it more. Also about not putting someone else on a pedestal, but also about setting boundaries and how to have fun with dating, but also how to not let someone play with you and still be treated respectfully by other guys, which I think can be difficult when you're dating. So yeah, it was a really interesting read. It was fun, it was enjoyable. I follow her on Instagram now and I really like her as a social media person. I listened to her interview at Almost 30 podcast. It was really fun. So yeah, The Shift by Tinks. It was a fun book. If you're single and you're dating, pick it up. You can read it if you're not single, but yeah, it's a good book. I enjoyed it and I think it gave me a lot more insight into how to date and just have fun with that. But also you can also use it for making friends and stuff. I just kind of swapped out dating with friends and I thought it was interesting. This book I listened to on Audible this year. I've already read it 2 times probably, the physical version. It's You Are Bad ASS by Jen Sincero, and I listened to it on Audible. It was great to listen to it again. It's just a really fun, light-hearted book about manifesting and mindset work, and yeah, it's just enjoyable. I like her style, I like her writing, and I also like how she narrated it, which is really important to me because some people are just so boring. But she knows how to read this book. It's interesting, it's fun. If you're new to manifesting, this is the best book to start. If you don't know anything about manifesting, but you have an interest, this is the book. Okay, so the next genre is celebrity books and memoirs. It's mostly Bravo celebrities, I have to admit, and I've listened to them on Audible because I like when the celebrity reads it themselves. So the first book I read was Next Level Basic by Stassi Schroeder. So she was in the first few seasons of Vanderpump Rules. I always thought she was kind of interesting, and I listened to a sample of her book on Audible and I thought it was enjoyable. I was just looking for something kind of podcast-like that was just like fun to listen to. It was fun, it was interesting. If you don't know her, definitely don't buy it. If you like Stassi, listen to it. It was fun. The next book I listened to was by Margaret Josephs from The Real Housewives of New Jersey. The title is Caviar Dreams, Tuna Fish Budget. It was just a funny book about her life. It was kind of a memoir, and I always like to read someone's business history, so that was really interesting how she started her own business and just being European and how she grew up with her mom and how she got onto The Real Housewives of New Jersey. And it was just a fun book. If you know Margaret Josephs and you like her, listen to it. If you don't. So the next book is Paris, the Memoir by Paris Hilton. This book was so good. You can tell that she worked by some amazing people to get this book out there. I love the way that she read it. She knows how to bring a story. She knows how to narrate. It was interesting. It was vulnerable. Like, I've really gained a lot of respect for her lately. I never really knew too much about her, but I didn't really like her that much. She was always in the tabloids a lot growing up, and she just came across not very interesting to me because of the baby voice and stuff. But now that she's come out with her documentary and with this book, I feel like I have a lot of respect for her now and I understand her perspective a lot more. And yeah, it was just a great read. It was a great book. Just if you know Paris Hilton, I would definitely just recommend to listen to it. I don't know if it's interesting to read, but it was definitely interesting to listen to. The next book I really don't recommend. It's by Andy Cohen, who is an executive producer at Bravo, I think. So he is involved with a lot of the Real Housewives. And I thought he was doing a press tour about his new book, like the Daddy Diaries or something. But I just looked for the Andy Cohen Diaries. But that is like an old book of him, of like 2014 or something. I had already purchased it, so I was just like, yeah, I'll listen to it. Because I was traveling to Bayreuth anyway. It was like 8 hours on a train. But it's just old. It's just outdated. Maybe in that year it would have been fun, but now it's just like, it just isn't interesting. I listened to a lot of it, but I'm not going to finish it. It's just old. It's not interesting anymore. Maybe the new one is interesting, but I'm just so put off at this point. I'm never reading an Andy Cohen book again, probably. The next category is writer's memoirs. So it's not from a celebrity, but just from a writer itself. So the first one I read is The Instant by Amy Liptrot, and it was sort of like a poetic memoir, kind of a year in the life living in Berlin. She is English or Irish or something, and she moved to Berlin to find love, and then it's about her dating and how that went. It's just like very poetic and sort of like slow and more like deep. Her first book I think was very successful, the one she wrote before this. I haven't read this. Like I just picked this up in a bookstore, it looked interesting. I mean, if you're into kind of like poetic memoir style books that aren't really specifically about something but just about experiencing, then I would recommend. It was an okay book. It was fun to read, but it wasn't amazing. Like, it was good. So the only other writer's memoir that I read was by Elizabeth Gilbert. It was called Committed, about her relationship with the man she meets in Eat, Pray, Love, and how difficult it was to have an international relationship because she's American and he is not, and they just couldn't. It's about the journey of getting him into the US, which was interesting, but then she intertwines with a lot of history about marriage and just a lot of research about it, and it's kind of like reading two books that aren't really related at the same time. It wasn't good. I didn't finish it. I put it down. I don't think I'll ever read an Elizabeth Gilbert book again, probably, because she just had that one. And I think Big Magic was okay. I read that a really long time ago. I liked it then. But yeah, it's just not for me. I didn't like this one. I didn't like City of Girls. I feel like I've had enough of Elizabeth Gilbert and Colleen Hoover and Tessa Bailey. The next and final genre is Christmas novels. The first Christmas novel is A Christmas Celebration by Heidi Swain. I found out after reading this that this is actually the third book in a series. So there's also a first and second book, and then this one is a third. I thought this book was okay. It wasn't great. It had like lots of cutesy Christmas stuff in there, which I liked, but it just was a little bit of a mess, to be honest. It was kind of like gripping. There was a romantic interest that I almost feel like it was written in later. Like, it wasn't really explored enough for me that she just thought he was hot, but there wasn't really anything interesting about their connection, to be honest. And what I did really love was her relationship with this older man who is isolated, and he lives in his cottage, and she goes and does like rounds to bring medicine to elder people. Like, she worked in Jordan with a charity organization, but the organization lost funding, so her position was scrapped, and she also made a terrible mistake, which you don't know what it is at the beginning. And then she comes to visit her godparents who live at this beautiful house, like this house in, I don't know, in the English countryside or something. She has a lot of duties there because the people that normally do the duties are gone. And she picks up all the duties, and then she has to take care of elderly people, bring them medicine and stuff like that. And she gets like involved in the town Christmas celebrations and stuff like that. Yeah, she has a lot of interest that isn't really interesting. She's also kind of dabbling between him and the brother, which also isn't really very interesting. But then one of the elderly people she ends up taking care of is so cute. He is all the way isolated, but she gets him to open up, and she helps him like clean up the home and helps him get like new glasses and just really revives his whole life. And then she helps him really come back to life essentially after his sister passed away, and that's just so cute. So yeah, you can read this, you can pick this up. It wasn't the best, but it was cute enough. Like, it's just a cute Christmas novel. The next one is Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh. I keep wanting to say Roman Holiday, but that's not it. So this one is about a guy and a girl, and they travel to Ireland every year from Chicago because they end up being from the same village. Their friendship is very cute. It's very funny. The jokes are great. The whole book is just about their air travel because there's a snowstorm and it's impossible to get to Ireland in time for Christmas, but then they end up flying like halfway around the world, and it's about their way back home, and then a little bit about when they are back in Ireland. And it's a little bit of a chaotic story, but the characters are good, they're funny, their connection is good, the jokes are great. It's just like a friends to lovers kind of story. It's fun, I would definitely recommend. And then I ended up picking up this book from Catherine Walsh, and it was like, there are a lot of similar things in here. Like, it's also about a brother in Chicago, and then it's like, and his girlfriend has a twin sister, but that was also in this book, so can't she just think of something new? And I was just kind of like, the same things kind of kept coming back. And then when I was looking on Goodreads, I realized that this is like the second one to this one. so that ended up making a lot more sense, because I was just kind of like, why is she writing about like the same things? But the main characters are different. So the brother from this main character is now the main character in this one, and then the girl is new. So I just felt that that was kind of like silly. I didn't get that at all, because I really don't like spoilers, so I didn't really research that much. But yeah, I'm reading this book now. I wanted to include it anyway for this book review, so I feel like it's supposed to be 33 books, but it ends up being like 37 or something. Yeah, it's just a great book. I like this one even more than the first one, to be honest, but they're both great. I like that the humor is good. I like that the jokes are funny. You get them immediately, and it's just cute and cozy, but also like a little bit more smart and realistic. And it's like, it's kind of like a fake dating, friends to lovers kind of story. I haven't finished it, but it's great, and I would definitely recommend. Okay, so those were all the books I've read this year. I see an hour and 11 minutes on the clock, which is way too much. But thank you so much for watching this. Let me know your favorite book recommendations, everything that you've read this year. Cute romance novels and business books and manifestation books are my favorites, so let me know, and I hope you have a great New Year's, and I will see you in the next year.